now Citrus County's top political podcast.
At some point you look around, and you're the only one.
It's pretty good.
And just like that, the perspective shifts.
Paging Bobby Winsler to the microphone. On in 3, 2.
Welcome in, coming to you from the Concurrent Media Network in the heart of Citrus County. However you're making this part of your day, be it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, or even through the Concurrent website, we are sure glad you're joining us. Today's show is a house ad. It's brought to you by the Concurrent, your newest outlet for Citrus County opinion-based news. Check out the Concurrent, read, listen, watch, discuss at theconcurrent.com. Welcome to the conversation. And welcome into you to the Bobby Winsler Show. It's our first. Well, sort of. I did these podcasts about 4 years ago that I called Braced for Impact. And then I've done a few reads here and there since. So it's not necessarily new, but it is good to be back. We're going to get right into a quick overview of just what this show is, and then we're going to end today's show talking about a single topic in local news. So let's start with this. I was recording this in my office, and for our YouTube audience, you can see I have the show's logo up on the screen behind me. And I hadn't told my wife yet what I was going to call the podcast. So Rachel owns a dance studio just down at the end of the same building here in the heart of Citrus County. She comes walking in, and I'm just holding my breath, waiting for her reaction to the show logo. So she walks to the back, nothing. And she comes back out to the front, and the screen catches her attention. She reads it for the first time, and she gives me "Oh, brother, the Bobby Winsler Show," and she exits with just the loudest audible eye roll you've heard. And you may have had the same reaction. And if I'm being honest, I had the same reaction. But here's the thing. Here's why it's important to be the focus. It's hard to get anything done without a bit of personality to it. Being a little bland doesn't mean you're not talented. It doesn't even mean you're going to be unsuccessful. There's a ton of productive but boring people out there. If you want to get the needle moving, though, if you want to get the conversation started, you need a little personality. It doesn't need to be larger than life like former President Donald Trump, nor does it need to be aggressive or standoffish like an old sports radio host, Jim Rome, comes to mind that fits that description. But it needs to be interesting. And there's a difference between effective and interesting, but the truth is they need to work together. Warren Buffett is effective. Steve Jobs was interesting. Elon Musk is effective and interesting. And that's the goal for this show, be effective and interesting. So for the last 7 years or so, the nature of my jobs has been to keep my head down. In 2014, I entered a PhD program at the University of Florida, and as a grad student, you do a lot of research that benefits the tenured faculty, with the hopes that your efforts will get you a third mention on a research paper or a book chapter, and you can ride their coattails for a little bit until you establish an academic career of your own. 2 years after entering the program in 2014, I moved out to Citrus County from Gainesville to run Mike Prendergast's sheriff race. And knowing that I was going to start a political consulting business here, I didn't want to have ever been seen as overshadowing my candidates. So I kept my head down then too. But now I've worked 3 election cycles, so my ability here is established. And I'm also on my own academic track as a visiting assistant professor at the University of Tampa. So the timing is right. And in addition to that, here's a wild stat from local politics. On May 1st, 2019, there were 11 candidates filed for local office. On May 1st of this year, which was last Saturday. It's the same amount of time until the next election cycle as that day was in 2019 was to the 2020 election cycle. There are no candidates filed. So at this point last cycle, there were 11. Locally here now, there are none. I have no idea why this is, and honestly, not a single explanation. So I have decided that instead of running a candidate campaign, although I may do a few of those too, but especially since none exist right now, I would instead run a media campaign. Media, after all, was my first love. I graduated from UF College of Journalism and Communications with my PhD. And 3 years before that, 3 years before I started working my first ever campaign in 2010, I actually started working for newspapers in 2007, the summer after I graduated high school. So what is the Concurrent? Because you may be seeing that you've seen this play out before. The Concurrent is not the first time a conservative-leaning publication has begun, and it's not even the first time it's been started by a citrus political consultant. Lou Newman started the Suncoast Standard in 2016, and I know what you're thinking. Here we go again. There are some key differences, though, and I think the main one is I love the Chronicle. I wrote 6 years for the Tampa Bay Times, dating back to when it was the St. Pete Times, and they're down there publishing twice a week now, and soon it probably won't even be that often. We are so lucky to have a good local community newspaper like the Chronicle. Here's the problem, though. For all the good the Chronicle does as a sole newspaper publication, and it does a lot of good, its editorial section can be bad. There are just some opinions that I read advocating for the direction of the county that I see where they're coming from, and I just can't simply find any agreement at all. The positions seem to be derived from either supporting whoever they consider to be a friend, trashing whoever they consider to be an opponent, or written from a progressive ideological view, sometimes all three of these at once. This isn't normally a problem for a paper to do in its opinion section. That's what the opinion section is for. But when you're the sole media voice with the amount of influence that carries, the need arises for a dissenting opinion. And that's what the Concurrent is. That's what the Winsler show is. A two-topic, 15-minute-ish show that gives you context in the biggest stories of the week. I also write a 750-word column twice a week. It takes about 3 minutes to read. It's published every Thursday and Sunday, but man, do I love these weekly podcasts for additional content because, a little personality helps get the message across, and the Chronicle can be a bit of a dial tone. So let's shift to this, our second topic of what this show is, but I want to get a quick spot read in first. Be among the first to advertise with the Citrus County Concurrent. We offer a variety of ways to reach your next consumer, including website graphics, audio reads, and even the traditional print advertising. Get in early, lock in your rate, even as our audience grows. Special consideration giving to nonprofits as well. Contact advertising at theconcurrent.com for more information. That's advertising at theconcurrent.com to learn more. Okay, let's get to this. I'm going to keep the focus of these topics local. But when your local outlets start sounding like presidential speeches, then there's going to be some crossover. President Joe Biden gave his first major address to Congress almost a week ago now last Wednesday, and he had a line that said, quote, "It's time to remember that we the people are the government, you and I," end quote. The Chronicle made essentially the same claim last month when they said, quote, "Residents need to understand that government isn't they, it's us," end quote. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. When I say sometimes the content in the editorial section can be head-scratching, I mean sometimes borderline, it just misses the point. I try to frame the argument in the context of views that are not my own. And for this reason, I understand the collective effort sentiment especially when government workers here locally are our friends and neighbors rather than nameless Washington administrators. I get that. But here's the problem. Even in that context, it's a ridiculous argument to make. The whole country was founded on an American identity separate from the authoritative governing body. The very idea of independence is opposite of what the Chronicle is trying to say here. It's a perfect example of the magic that could come from a $100,000 anonymous donation toward a new animal shelter. Think of it this way. If this thing is going to be built, and it's a long way from being built, it shouldn't fully come from tax dollars, although in reality it's going to end up being some type of public-private partnership. The reason that we put, as Americans, so much influence on the individual instead of on the government is because of people like this anonymous donor. The capacity of what a community can do when they bond together voluntarily may be limitless, but it has to be voluntary. That's the American way. Personally, I would like to thank the donor and actually advocate that the donor comes forward not in an anonymous nature, because I think that movements need faces and leaders and personalities. But the selfless move is undoubtedly simply remarkable, and it has saved us a sales tax increase discussion, at least for a little while longer. So that's all from the Bobby Winsler Show. Follow the Concurrent on social media for the latest updates, and we'll be back to you next Tuesday at noon. If you want to join the conversation, find us on social, the Concurrent Facebook, Twitter, or go to the Concurrent website, post on our discussion boards. This has been the Bobby Winsler Show, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, the Concurrent website, or wherever you get your podcasts. See you next week.